Welcome to Resilience Unravelled. Hi everybody and welcome to Resilience Unravelled, a podcast that examines all aspects of personal and organisational resilience. A huge all-encompassing subject that covers the ability to thrive in life by harnessing your cognitive, emotional, physiological and contextual abilities. I share stories from people who have thrived despite remarkable obstacles, as well as highly successful practitioners and experts across a range of topics. And this podcast introduces their amazing stories and expertise, as well as my own reflections, perspectives, strategies and tips, which come from my own synthesis of themes and trends from wider learning. You can go to qedod.com/extras to access offers, tools and resources, including free articles and ebooks. For those of you that would be interested in supporting our work and contributing more proactively, you can find our new Patreon page at patreon.com. Then search for Resilience Space Unravelled. So, let's get started. Enjoy the show. So whenever we talk about sleep on this podcast, we always get lots of reaction from people saying, yes, please, we need more information on sleep. Could we know more? Sleep is really important for my resilience. Oh my goodness, I can't sleep well. Oh my God, oh my God, oh my God. And all sorts of excitement in the sort of atmosphere about sleep. And so I thought to myself, well, why don't we talk to another expert? And so we've hooked up with Mollie McGlocklin, whose website is sleepisaskill.com. And we're going to have a short chat. We're going to talk all about sleep. We're going to talk about what good sleep's all about, how to get sleep, how to stay asleep, what to do when you wake up after sleep, and the sleep reset, which is something that Mollie talks about. So good evening. Well, good evening where I am, Mollie.
Thank you for having me. It's morning over here where I am on the West Coast over in Vegas right now, actually.
You're in Vegas. Oh my goodness.
Yes.
Hey!
I know. Wild. Yeah, I've been for the last 2.5 years traveling full time with my boyfriend, and we've been international for like a big chunk of it. But we are over in Vegas right now, headed to New York City next week. Just hopping all around, but it is really nice weather right here. Right now, it's wild. Coming from as a northeaster originally to experience sunny weather in the middle of winter, it's just very confusing and awesome.
Fantastic. We're out there in a few months. Actually, I can't wait. It's just such a great place to go. So.
Yeah. Oh, awesome. Very cool.
Excellent. And I think it's one of those things when you travel around the world a lot, getting a good night's sleep is important, isn't it? Because different hotel rooms every night when we're speaking or training or working, one of the biggest challenges, that thing, and I find it with shift workers as well, as that thing about the different work at the wrong time of the day or the night with jet lag and all sorts of things. So I'm personally very interested to hear what you're going to talk about. And I always find I learn tons when I talk to people about this subject. So I'm really excited to see what we're going to chat about today. So how would you describe who you are and what you do? Tell me more about yourself.
That's awesome. And I'm happy to be in a conversation with someone that's a fellow sleep enthusiast, because it's fascinating area of research. So who I am and what I do, my name's Mollie McGlocklin again. I started a company called Sleep is a Skill that works to optimize your sleep through a blend of technology, accountability, and behavioral change. And how that came to be was really, and which is why I'm happy to be on your podcast, is that it came from a place of total, burnout, honestly. And as an entrepreneur for many years, burning the candle at both ends, and sleep was something that just had zero kind of attention in my life or prioritization. And it was just in the back burner. Until I actually went through a period of intense insomnia for a bunch of months. And this was in when I started adding jet lag into the mix of my already maladaptive sleep patterns. And so once I did that, then it was just kind of all bets were off. And I can laugh about it now, but at the time it was really one of the lowest periods of my life. It was a real, not to have puns here, but a real wake up call. It was something where I had to shift how I was being in many, many areas of my life, in order to restore my sleep in a way that was reliable and count onable. Because at the time it occurred to me like, is this going to always be this way? And I actually went to the doctors. I was in Croatia at the time and, couldn't speak the language, went in with Google Translate and left with the prescription of their version of like Ambien.
Yeah.
Um, and, so in that moment, it was really a real kind of draw a line in the sand time in my life of, okay, what direction am I going to go in here? And am I going to be reliant on a pill to get myself to sleep? Just it felt very like, okay, something's got to change. And I tend to have a pretty obsessive personality. So I actually really went down the rabbit hole on this topic and became fascinated in what for me was just totally unknown information around circadian rhythm optimization, looking at the world of chronobiology into how I could bring it into my life. And as I started bringing some of these principles in that I now, live and breathe by, everything kind of had to revamp, and started working with people along the way. And, originally just because it was such heightened levels of empathy when I would hear other people that couldn't sleep, um, because I had been there. And then when I started bringing in some of these practices, bringing in different levels of tech that people hadn't been exposed to track their sleep, some of the before and afters that we would get to experience would just be mind blowing. I mean, it would be like a whole other type of life through the lens of transforming their sleep. So Sleep as a Skill was born, now launching a online training course and a podcast, and it's all come out of this, real fascination and intrigue around what transformation is possible when we really take a real hard look at our sleep, and then also bring in this idea of it being a skill set that many of us in our modern society are just not connected to. I certainly wasn't. So excited to speak more with you about those specifics.
Brilliant. Okay. So, most of us know what sleep is, and most of us know what the various bits of sleep are. We've heard of deep sleep, REM sleep, non-REM sleep, alpha waves. That jargon just gets tossed around all over the place. Could you sort of sort that out for us a little bit so we know what sleep is and what's the sort of secret source of sleep, the best bits that you really need to make sure you're getting?
Sure. Yeah. Great question. So number one, as far as when we're talking about sleep, um, it can be helpful even to back up and know that for humans, we're operating within a 24-hour um, rhythm, a circadian rhythm, in which in our modern society we are usually looking for a certain small chunk of that to be our sleep time. And when I say small, it's ranging for most adults anywhere from around 7 to 9 hours is what is kind of thrown around. And within that span of time, as a goal, we are looking to have as rich of quality of sleep and quantity of sleep as possible for ourselves. And based on whatever gender and age group you're in, levels of stress, there's all kinds of things that will impact those possible numbers. But so from that place, then we break it down into 4 different stages. And you have your light sleep, this transitionary sleep, you have deep sleep, and you have REM sleep. So from that place, then you look at, okay, so what's my the breakdown for me? What's kind of the standard ratios that I'm exhibiting in my sleep quality? So what the traditional sleep architecture, you guys might have been familiar with, seeing kind of a breakdown of what traditional sleep architecture can look like in a, healthy, active human.
Yeah.
And what the kind of goal looks like is to have the majority of our deep sleep in the beginning of the night is, these are we're talking in kind of basics right now, but largely in the beginning portion of the night. And then you're transitioning over to REM sleep in the later portion of your night. And with the thought process that is there's different camps as to why why we even move into that REM sleep. But one of it being the idea that that's helping us prepare for the day, helping kind of bringing us back online because you're really very active brain waves in REM sleep. and then your body temperature is warming up during that period, and then you're transitioning into fully being awake. So that's kind of an overarching idea of what it can look like. Now we can get into the specifics of what happens when things are not as accountable and kind of ideal. And then that's when we'll see a lot of splintered sleep. We'll see maybe people skipping a big bulk of that deep sleep, and maybe favoring a large percentage of REM, vice versa, or lots of light sleep. So that's where we get into more of the skill set of how to kind of bring that into a level of homeostasis where we wake up feeling refreshed.
Brilliant. So should we slay some sleep myths? So one of
Yes.
one of the myths that I often hear is I'll skip sleep during the week and catch it up at the weekend. What do you think about that?
Yes. Oh my God, such a good one to begin with, because really that you nailed right there one of the biggest hurdles for many of us in our modern societies, and what that as actually gets referred to as social jet lag. And the reason it's called social jet lag is it's the idea that based on our kind of social obligations or confinements or opportunities, that we maybe spend a big bulk of our week, to your point, work days, or 5 or 4 days out of the week, kind of consistent, doing a particular rhythm, and then whatever the weekend happens, or some
Yeah.
those count onable periods when then we tend to swing our consistency, and we go into going to bed later, waking up later. What the problems with that is that not only are you then putting yourself through your own self-created social jet lag, there's also a term coined as metabolic jet lag, which is also because likely not only are you skewing the consistency of the time you're going to bed when you're going to bed much later and waking up much later, but you're probably also changing the time that you eat, and maybe the types of foods that you're eating too, especially if you add alcohol into the mix, or amp up the coffee, and all these sort of things that are very ordinary, very normal in our society. So you bring those things in, and then you're also experiencing metabolic jet lag, which those are two big cues to the body that the rhythm that was prescribed for it before and more normally is now thrown off. And now it's going to have to be working overtime to get itself back on track. And the downside of that is what you experience is the body is no longer having as strong of a level of circadian rhythm. So all of this really, this, company of sleep is a skill. The whole point is to work to strengthen our circadian rhythm, and it's called circadian rhythm entrainment. And what's fascinating, because it's that our body can really be trained. You'll see that when you go travel, internationally, and it will be so weird the first couple nights, and you're going to the bathroom in the middle of the night, like you're just so crazy tired in the middle of the day, like all of these mismatches. But as you'll see, within it takes a period of time, a couple days, what have you, you start to then acclimate to your new environment, which is phenomenal. It's so interesting that our bodies are able to do that, which is really speaks to, resilience, speaks to being dynamic. And it can be a great cost. That's why one of the reasons why we get sick when we travel a lot, when you change around all of the timing and the choreography of what's known as our master clock in our brain, that's really dying to keep everything on track.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's kind of a look at that idea of, I can make up for it on the weekends, because unfortunately we really can. And not only are we throwing things off when we do that, then we're spending the rest of the week trying to get back to how it was, and spending all 7 days being kind of out of alignment.
Yes. And it is interesting. And one of the things I hear a lot from the sleep experts is this idea that you should treat the weekend very much as you treat the week. So if you naturally
Yes.
sleep a certain amount of time, sleep that. And I always hear this idea that you actually can't oversleep, and I think that's true actually, because your body just tends to wake you up when you've had enough.
Yeah.
Here's another myth. Here's another myth I often hear: I'm sharper when I have less sleep.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. So some people might experience that phenomenon. I've actually heard a number of people kind of point to that. And, what they can be pointing to is levels of kind of adrenaline that get released
Yes.
and levels of often even anxiety that can, be a very fine line between, anxiety and kind of excitement or alertness. And, while you might find that for a couple, times, the sustainability of that theory is pretty flawed based on, particularly, they'll look at studies of people's aptitude after shortened sleep duration over a period of time, and their ability to fulfill on, some simple kind of tasks, some simple quizzes or what have you. And it's just markedly different. And while we might experience ourselves as like, on point, when you look at the numbers and how that relates to our version of ourselves in a fully rested state, it's just clear. It's the same way you think, oh, I'm so charismatic if I've had a few drinks, and you
Yes.
watch back the tape and you're like, oh dear, that was not charismatic.
That was, I like,
um,
that's a great way of putting it. And I think the thing you've hit on there is really, it's very smart actually. This idea that sharpness and anxiety go together, because of course it's stimulating
yeah.
cortisol, but also you're getting a dopamine
Yeah.
from this idea, or a pleasure sort of reward hit. Because what you're doing is, if you're not careful, you're sort of addicting yourself to a lack of sleep, and as you say, you're fooling yourself into believing you're sharper. And the number of people who actually look at their work the next day and have to redo it or examine the quality of what they do is a bit of a challenge.
Right.
I've
Absolutely.
only got two more of these silly myths for you, but the ones I
Okay,
hear the
great.
most there. I sleep best when I have my dog, stroke cat, stroke child in bed with me.
I love that. Yeah, well, and that's actually a great one to look at too, around these far-reaching principles. So that can also apply to, I sleep best with having my, TV on, having a nightcap, having all these type of things that we cling to, because those can actually be very helpful for feeling, at ease, feeling relaxed, and then drifting off to sleep. So to that point, there's some, there could be some reality to that idea on the front end, of the ability to fall asleep. And
Yes.
then, but then on the long end, it's, if we were to, hook you up to polysonogram, what is likely is that usually those things don't remain static. The dog doesn't just lay in a corpse-like position. The, baby isn't just totally silent throughout the whole course of the night. Of course, the baby topic is a whole other
Oh yeah.
area,
Let's not go there.
which, yes. And I also want to put in that I'm so empathetic in all of these topics, because I haven't had the baby topic. I don't have my own personal experience with, but all the other things, I get it. Because, there's this sense of, listen, I want to just get a great night of sleep. These things make me feel at ease, make me feel at peace. And people are just often, a lot of the people that come to me anyway, they're at the point where they're just really desperate for a good night of sleep, and they want the thing that they've known to work. So I get it. And on the flip side of it, if we're looking for sustainability and to feel amazing over the long term, um, things like, the dog in the bed or what have you, the frequent wake ups, it's almost as if you're someone having to sleep next to a snorer or something, where you are then experiencing some of these micro wakened state. And the problem with that is that it can interrupt your ability to get into those deeper stages that we were discussing earlier, the slow wave sleep and the REM sleep, that are both really important to feeling rejuvenated in the morning.
Right. Interesting. Now, your site is called sleepisaskill.com, as you said. And I
Yep.
like your idea of treating sleep as a skill. So would you sort of unpack a couple of the key skills we should know more about?
Sure. Yeah. Um, so first of all, the reason I point to this kind of concept of sleep as a skill is that I think there's an opportunity for us to, begin to speak or think differently and kind of create a new paradigm around sleep. Um, because if we were to pan back and go to hunter-gatherer days and try to make that argument that sleep is a skill, I mean, to cavemen or something, that period of time would just think it was ridiculous. It would just sound so nuts, right? Like, it just, come on, you go to sleep and that's the end of it. However, I'm really making the argument that in our modern day society, really post Edison, that what we've been doing as a culture is lengthening the span of our natural days. Because in the past, the sun would set and beyond maybe a bonfire, or later on the candle, and then also bringing in the lanterns, largely you went to bed after sunset, plus or minus a short span of time. But of course, now in our modern day society, only within the last 200 years, really, which is like less than that, which is really a blip in the time that humans have roamed this earth, we've really all begun to think that this is normal. Netflix until 1 a.m. with popcorn and wine doesn't seem that weird, and yet it really is pretty weird if we pan out. So from that place, I'm making the argument that for many of us, there's an opportunity to go back to as if we knew nothing around what it takes to get great sleep, and then start at the beginning. And so as we start at the beginning, then there's no judgment, because there's no sense of I'm a good sleeper, I'm a bad sleeper, because that doesn't really apply in a skill set. You just build it up.
Yeah.
Right. Which is so important, because I get so many people that are stuck in this, well, I'm a bad sleeper, my family was a bad sleeper, whatever that even means. But it can keep us limited. So from that place, then we look at, okay, if we really are starting fresh, a blank canvas, then what is there that is important to understand about sleep? So one of the first things that I speak to is this concept of time givers, and they call them Zeitgebers, but it basically it translates to time givers in chronobiology. And what that looks like is that there are a number of things that are very important to keep the body on time. And one of the most important things is a consistent exposure to light and dark. And the light and dark conversation is a big one, because we're exposed to so many different types of faux lighting, and we don't think much of it, most of us anyway, until then. When you start to really get cued into this, you'll get very responsible around your lighting exposure. So that looks like the types of lights that are in your home. Many of us have switched over to more energy efficient lighting, and then that brings in a more blue spectrum and green spectrum. So out of those can suppress melatonin production. And it's pretty wild how much of a difference that can make in the body's knowingness to turn off. And if you harken back to those hunter-gatherer days again, it would be very weird if in the middle of the day, then our body was being told to then go to sleep for a whole huge chunk of time. It wouldn't have done that. So that's what it's trying to do in our modern society. When we have all these bright lights at us, it's trying to just keep us in a rhythm that works. So you want to get really responsible about your light exposure, but also making sure you get plenty of it in the very early part of the morning, because that's really important. Something called sunlight anchoring, and that you're getting that particularly within your eyes, which connects to your master clock, your suprachiasmatic nucleus, and that will help keep the entrainment conversation on in a flowing state, in a harmonious state. And that will also relate to your hormonal alignment of both cortisol and melatonin, which is really kind of what we're getting at here. So you look at light and dark, then you go down to temperature, being mindful of keeping temperature both on a higher side for your body during the day and lower at night. And some of the things that impact temperature then below that are meal timing, because that can warm up your body and also act as that metabolic cue. And then exercise, movement, when we're putting that into our days. And then there's also a number of things that number of modalities, whether it's heat therapy, cold therapy, breath work, a few other things that you can do to start bringing in some kind of homeostasis to your body's kind of rest and digest systems to bring about both parasympathetic and sympathetic states. So there's a lot there, I know, but it's really exciting when you start to pull that in a way that works for your sleep.
I like this idea that you've created this idea of a sleep risk profile. I think that's a smart idea, isn't it? Because I think it's that thing about you sort of need to know, you need to know what to cut out as much as what to start, don't you? Because actually,
Sure.
in order to do anything new, you've got to sort of stop doing something else. So I think that's a real
Yes.
smart idea.
Oh, awesome. Yeah, because you make a great point. Because, and it's supposed also, I'm making the argument that I'm bringing in technology, accountability, behavioral change. And anyone that's familiar with behavioral change, you make that great point that if you cut something out, you really need to, or there's an opportunity to add something back in
Yeah.
that's going to serve you in a better way. And so, and by the way, this also applies to our shift workers, which we're incredibly grateful for and thankful for. They help, keep our society moving in a way that works. Our medical community, there's, so many people that are, it's so important that they are working on these counter to the things that I was talking about, the light and dark schedules. But even for them, then they can start instituting these concepts just kind of on a slightly altered way. So they'll create their own kind of faux light dark system, faux, kind of a metabolic state versus, while they're eating versus not, or fasted state. There's a lot that can be done there. Just that one takes a bit more finessing.
Yes. Interesting. Now, you mentioned something about sleep gadgets, and
Yeah.
I noticed you've been to CES 2020.
Yes.
Have you found something? Have you found anything particularly groovy?
Yes. Oh my gosh. Yeah, there's some. So number one, yeah, CES was incredible. It's the largest tech event in the world, and they this year had a huge presence for sleep tech, and it was really fascinating. Um, and so some of the things that were noteworthy or that got, kind of some of the awards from CES is, particular levels of innovation. So some, for instance, there is a snoring pillow there that, the snoring topic can be challenging for both the snorer and the partner of someone that's snoring. Um, and so there was certain like motion pillows that would move to help people deal with that. So, but more on the without having to wake them up is the concept. So that one was really interesting. There is also a lot to do with kind of biofeedback and as it relates to our ability to notice when we go into some of more of these panic states. Because many of the people that are coming to me are what they're dealing with is that kind of often relatable idea of I just cannot turn my brain off.
Yes.
I just feel so exhausted and yet my body does not seem to be in alignment with that. Like it's wired, but I'm so tired.
Yes.
Yeah. So all of those things, those hyper aroused states can point to kind of some of that inability to self-soothe and calm ourselves in a way that works.
Yes.
So they had certain meditative headgear that would kind of, set up in a way of similar to EEG readouts, and that you can see visually your brain state changing, and then have these moments of like, oh my God, I can actually control what state that I'm in through a series of XYZ, certain calming mechanisms. So that one can be really empowering for people that are dealing, particularly in the camp of insomnia or just shortened sleep duration or frequent wake ups if they want to be able to help calm themselves back down in the middle of the night. So those were really interesting. Then different types of lighting. So bringing in different circadian rhythm lighting. There was a pair of glasses that can bring in light therapy, but more seamlessly, like just on a pair of glasses that you can't really tell you're engaging in light therapy instead of sitting in front of like a light box. Or the big goal is to get everyone outside more, is to
Yes.
like in the early days, in the early part of the day. And sometimes there's things that have us not be able to do that: travel, sickness, certain parts of the world that we're living in being more challenging to get as much sunlight. So those things can be really interesting. And there's just so much different types of beds that would heat up, cool down, different types of apparatuses that you can put on to your bed to, make a difference in both the timing and comfort. And then sound therapies, because of course sound is another one we didn't get into, but that can be impactful in our ability
Yes.
to sleep and feel, at ease. So there's a lot out there, but everyone that I work with largely starts with something called the Aura Ring, just because it's one of the most user-friendly, easy places to begin, because you just put it on your hand versus some of the ones that are on the head can be challenging for people to stick with. So even just getting some of these mainstay gadgets can be a helpful way to automate the old adage to begin to keep a sleep diary. If you want to take a real look at your sleep, this can automate that process for you.
Wow. And there are some people in the world who will absolutely adore obsessing and buying tons of gadgets, and there's a lot of people who
Yes.
will get stressed out by the very nature of the gadget itself.
Yes, exactly.
But the point is how much actually the technology is leapt forward, and technology only ever bothers with an area where there's a sort of significant problem, really. So it just shows, this is an area that is a problem in our modern lives, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah.
It's something that was really not cracked, and that's why I like this idea of sleep as a skill. So Mollie, I keep looking at your picture. Mollie has a great picture on our website, which is covered in confetti. And we were talking about it earlier, where you have special pictures done, you throw in confetti. So
Yes.
I never see that in my life. I love your website, by the way. But tell us how we can get to meet you, or get to talk to you, or find you online. How can we connect with you? And is there anything in particular you want to tell us about what you're getting up to over the next couple of months that we might be interested in joining in with?
Oh, sure. Yeah. So like you pointed to so well, yeah, sleepisaskill.com is where all these things sort of live. And a couple of them are the new sleep reset course, where we'll take you through super interactive experience. Really, it's not meant to be just like you buy a course and it's kind of grows cobwebs. It's super interactive. I would be part of the process, and you get it's a 45-day breakdown of your sleep, and every day you are engaging and then getting feedback around your sleep as it relates to how it went the night before, and then setting yourself up from some of these principles that we go more in depth on to improve your sleep. Really, I'm making the argument that if you are looking to transform your sleep and you're starting at the nights, then it's really almost too late. Like, just get comfy in your bed, because, really what we're trying to do is the large bulk of this is done during the daylight hours, which is kind of shifts the way that we look at sleep. Of course, there's some things that we do in the evening, of course, but, a lot of this circadian rhythm entrainment things happen during daylight hours. So we look at that. And then also launching the Sleep is a Skill podcast. Super excited about, going to nerd out on all topics sleep. Committed that lots of practical takeaways with that. And then also doing each Monday, in case you haven't noticed, some pretty obsessive personality traits. And so I have something called Mollie's Monday Obsessions newsletters, and that's all related to the current things that I'm obsessing over in sleep and health and wellness. Each Monday, those go out.
Brilliant. Wow. I mean, the trouble is with sleep, it's one of those subjects that it seems really easy until you start unpacking it, and then you realize that you need to spend hours and hours and hours chatting, and we haven't got hours and hours and hours. And I'm going to be very respectful of your time and say, Mollie, that's been an amazing sort of look at some different areas of sleep than the things that we talked about before. So thank you for that. And basically, I think it's been really fascinating. And what you've demonstrated to me is that there are some fresh approaches, which I think is quite exciting, really, isn't it?
Oh, well, number one, thank you for giving me your time to, speak more about this. It's literally my favorite topic. And it's so wonderful to meet someone that also shares in the enthusiasm. And yeah, I do think it's a fascinating area. And I think it's an area, I'm calling it the sleep renaissance right now, where more and more people are beginning to cue into the importance and urgency of us as a society shifting this kind of rising sleep deprivation rates, in a way that's more behavioral based versus, going down a pharmaceutical route or anything of that nature. So I think I'm really grateful for the time and excited about what you're putting together and how to help people be more resilient, accountable, and just ready to take on their life and their what they're after.
You're just reading my you're reading the words on my screen grabber.
Yes, exactly. And I have your website up, and I'm just like, oh my God, this is my guy. Really just the avoidance of burnout. Oh my God, because it's really where this all came from for me. And it's, to see that you can work through that and get to the other side is just incredible.
Yeah. Brilliant. Mollie, it's been an absolute joy, and I wish you luck with the podcast. And hopefully we'll drop in and see how you're getting on sometime later next year. And
yes,
thank you so much for giving us some time today.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.
You take care. Hi everybody. I hope you found that episode useful and interesting. Feedback is always welcomed, and if you are in the mood to subscribe to us or even leave a comment on iTunes or Stitcher, that would be amazing. If you want to suggest ideas or even people you would like me to interview, then reach out to us at qedod.com/contact. As I said earlier, you can go to qedod.com/podcasts for show notes or follow the links. And you can go to qedod.com/extras to access offers, tools and resources, including free articles and ebooks. For those of you that would be interested in supporting our work and contributing more proactively, you can find our new Patreon page at patreon.com. Then search for Resilience Unraveled. I look forward to being in your ear next time around. Take care.